Hello and welcome to another unit by unit review. Today we look at the Drukhari book and we take a look at the Succubi, the leaders of the witch cults. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to another installment of Unit by Unit here at SkaredCast. Today we continue our look at the Drukhari Codex and we look at the second HQ in the Drukhari book, the Succubus. That they are the leaders of the witch cults. So, as always, this is like a two-part video. We first go into a bit of the lore of each of the Succubi and who they are and what they represent to give us a better feel for the unit. And then we talk a little bit about their stats, Wargear options, little things that matter to me. Now, check the other links down below for not only the Patreon page, but also the other videos in the series, like the Archon, for example. Of course, patrons are getting a more in-depth look tactically at different things like this, so check that out as well. So let's begin. The Succubi. The Succubi are the ruling elite of the witch cults. Impossibly elegant and beautiful, they stalk through the mayhem of battle as if born to it. Surrounded by cliques of their lethal handmaidens who search out worthy alien opponents for their mistress to slay. Sometimes informally referred to as archites, arena queens, or pain maidens, Succubi are collectively known as the Yintak, or brides of death. Cool. Succubi are intensely vain, and not without good reason. With each appearance they make in the arenas of Comorragh, they draw enormous crowds who come to see their elegant butchery. The Succubi of the witch cults aggressively guard their beauty, and as a result, are ravaging in their physical appearance, with supple alabaster flesh clasped with bladed corsets and high-necked bodysuits of liquid silk. When she descends from her lush aerial quarters onto the field of battle, it is with the arrogance and majesty of a cruel-hearted queen. Many of the greatest Succubi seek to transcend the earthly violence of the arena and become one with the act of the kill itself. And no succubus is secure in her position without constant and undeniable proof of her skill. They regularly take the lead in the war against real space, not only for the feast of plunder, but also to hunt the champions of the lesser races and defeat them in showy displays of sheer skill. So here we have the Succubi. The Succubi are the leaders of the witch cults. They're incredibly talented, they're performers, and they have to be pretty ruthless with their position in the Dark City. But how do they play into the game itself? So let's take a look at their stats and their rules. If you like Succubi of Archons, leave a comment down below. Let me know why you prefer the Succubi to the Archon. So, the Succubi themselves, they have a decent movement. They move 8 inches. They have perfect ballistic skill and weapon skill. They have a strength and toughness of like any Eldar. They have a strength and toughness of 3. They have 5 wounds. They have 4 attacks, leadership 8, and they have a t-shirt save of a 6+. So, as you can see, pretty standard stats for a Dark Eldar Drukhari character. Nothing crazy, decent amount of wounds. You know, be careful with those D6 damage weapons. very, like, not really that tough, good at shooting and killing stuff in close combat, a decent amount of attacks, you know, nothing to write home about, but decently skilled. Now, where the Succubus gets really cool is when you're combining, the same as most characters, combining the Wargear traits and the obsessions and the combat drugs that they can take. So, how does a Succubi come equipped? A Succubus is a single model armed with an Agonizer and an Archite Glaive. So, as its stock, they come with an Agonizer and an Archite Glaive. It's great, you know, the Archite Glaive is free and the Agonizer is 4 points. So, at 50 points for the Succubus, it's a pretty decent buy. Now, they do have a variety of Wargear options, and this is where the Succubus can become quite a toolkit character for the budding real space raid. You can either turn them into more of a killy monster, or you can turn them into more of a support character. Personally, I prefer them as a support character, but some people might want to run them as a close combat character, or a buffing character, which doesn't make any sense. But you can do either or, whatever you choose. So this model may replace its Agonizer with, sorry, the light's really weird today, with an Archite Glaive, or the Archite Glaive. Oh no, it may replace its Agonizer and Archite Glaive with one item from the Witch Cult list. So this is essentially a choice to take either a Shardnet and Impaler, or a pair of Hydra Gauntlets, or Razor Flails. So either of those you can take. Now, they each have different rules, so let's take a look at it. Now, my favorite by far is either the Archite Glaive, which then you can turn into like a Relic Archite Glaive, or the Shardnet and Impaler. The Shardnet and Impaler, we'll go through the stats right now, is essentially a strength of user, -1 AP, 2 damage for the Impaler. And what the Shardnet does is it makes the fallback, we'll get to the rules, but it allows you to hold units in combat better. So that gets pretty cool. So every time the bearer fights, you make one additional attack with the Shardnet and Impaler, which is pretty cool, so they have an extra attack. And if it's an infantry unit is affected by the no retreat rule, when they have the net, you force your opponent to roll a d3 to try beat your d6. Now that is a rule for witches where you can hold infantry units in combat. So that's the way I like to run her, because there's one little model, she can tag a unit of infantry and make it very hard for them to fall back just by herself. Now the Shardnet and Impaler is 5 points. Then you can also have the Hydra Gauntlets. Now, Hydra Gauntlets are -1 AP as well. They're only a 1 damage weapon. They get an extra attack, so she goes up to 5. And she can reroll failed wound rolls. This is pretty handy if you're going against something that you need to reroll lots of wounds, but it's not my favorite choice. And then we have the Razor Flails. Now, Razor Flails are also -1 AP. They give you D3 additional attacks, and you can reroll failed to hit rolls. This is probably the less useful for the Succubus because she hits on 2s and has an inherent reroll 1s, so it doesn't really affect her too much. If you want some extra attacks, that's great, but there are other ways to do it better with a Succubus. The other option she has is to replace her Agonizer with a Splinter Pistol, Blast Pistol, or an Impaler. So if you just want the Impaler to do 2 damage attacks, you can take the Impaler. If you want to take a Splinter Pistol to make her cheaper, just take a pistol, then you can do that and take just a pistol. Meaning that for 50 points, you get an Archite Glaive, a Splinter Pistol, and the Succubus. Or you can take a Blast Pistol for an additional 10 points. If you really need to crack something open and do d6 damage with a little melter gun, that can be really handy if you're going to be in a protracted combat or against tanks or things like that. I like the Blast Pistol, but the way I run the Succubus, she's used as a supporting character to tie up infantry, and therefore she's not really going to be used that much for killing big things. But if you have 10 extra points, that Blast Pistol looks sure appealing for that. Okay, so now let's take a look at abilities. So, A couple of basic abilities, like every Drukhari unit, she has Power from Pain, which is a cumulative statistic increase, or like a boost that they get as the game progresses. So turn 1, she can ignore wounds on a 6+. Turn 2, she gets reroll charge ranges and reroll advance. Turn 3, she gets +1 to hit in combat. Turn 4, she becomes fearless. And turn 5, every enemy unit within 6 inches is at -1 leadership. And these are cumulative throughout the game. So really cool. So she starts pretty much with a 6 up, feel no pain, which means those 5 wounds might go a little bit longer, and she can, you know, it does come into play. The +1 to hit can be handy against tougher to hit opponents later in the game, and the reroll charge distances and advances can come quite handy, especially with some of the cool obsessions, but helps her get into combat more reliably, which is very useful. The -1 leadership is cool as well if you start doing some damage towards the end of the game, and the fearlessness doesn't really come into play with one model units. The second one is combat drugs. Now, combat drugs are an ability that we looked at in the general overview of the book, but it allows witch units to either roll on a statistics boost that'll increase their weapon skill, their strength, their attacks, their toughness, their leadership, or their movement, or it allows you as an Archon, or a Succubi in this case, to pick a trait as long as it's not duplicated before all the traits are picked. So you can choose either an extra attack, or an extra toughness, or an extra strength, or 2 inches of movement, or more, or extra leadership on the Succubus itself to help her in combat, or to help her throughout the game. And because you get to choose, that's pretty cool, allowing you to kind of tailor the combat drug to the opponent that you're fighting. Now, personally, I am a big fan of the, as I said, the Shardnet and Impaler. It gives her 5 attacks, and at the same time, I like adding +1 strength, so she becomes standard strength 4, which means that she's wounding Marines on 4s and most tanks on 5s. With a -1 2 damage weapon, that can come in handy with the Impaler. Now, some people with an Archite Glaive would go with an extra attack, for example, to make sure she has 5 attacks with her Archite Glaive. So, take a look at what drug you feel is best. If you feel like survivability is something you need, add the extra toughness. Or if you want to get into combat a lot faster, maybe the 2-inch movement would be useful. Which one is probably not as useful would be the +1 to weapon skill, because she's already weapon skill 2, or the +2 leadership, because she already has a high leadership. She doesn't really gain anything from a leadership boost. So she has a rule called Brides of Death. In the fight phase, you reroll hits of 1 for friendly witch cult units whilst they're within 6 inches of this model. So, any witch cult unit, that's any witch cult tank, like a Raider or Venom, or even a Razorwing jet fighter, if you wanted to, or a Tantalus, or any unit like Hellions, Reaver jet bikes, Beastmasters, Witches, and other Succubi, you know, they get a reroll 1s to hit in close combat. So, normally they're hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. Starting on turn 3, they're hitting on 2s because of Power from Pain, rerolling 1s. So she really makes units of Witches and Reaver jet bikes and Hellions very effective in close combat by hitting more efficiently. And therefore getting more hits in, more dice, means more rolls for your opponent, means more armor saves failed, means more enemies dead, means an easier path to victory. She also has Lightning Dodge, an ability that gives her a 4+ invulnerable save. Now this can be increased with a Warlord trait to 3+, that's my favorite, little pro tip right there. And she also has the No Escape rule. Roll off if an enemy unit within 1 inch of enemy models with this ability wishes to fall back. The unit can only fall back if the player controlling it wins the roll-off. So, you charge into a unit of infantry. They wish to fall back so they can shoot at your Succubi or maybe another unit that's in the combat as well. You and your opponent have to roll off. Your opponent can only run away if they win the roll-off, which is awesome. Helps you hold stuff in combat. That's where that Shardnet and Impaler comes in handy. there is also an option for witches. Now, I'm running her solo with no witches in my army, so that's why I like the Shardnet. And she allows your opponent to roll a d3 only against your d6. That makes it more efficient at holding units in combat so they can't fall back, so they cannot shoot the units that are stuck in combat. And that's a very important Dark Eldar thing to know. Keywords. She's Eldari, Drukhari, and Witch Cult. She can be any Witch Cult you wish. And she has character, infantry, and succubus keywords. So, there you have it, guys. The Succubus. What sort of use would you have on the Succubus? What sort of cool tactics and strategies are you going to use in your next real space raid? I love reading the comments down below, and as always, this is Skari, the Fancy Archon, here in the Spire telling you guys about the new Drukhari book. Now, if you have any questions, comments, leave a comment down below, and a huge shout out to all the Patreons that make this possible. If you'd like to join the Patreon denizens of the Dark City, please check the link down below and help support the content and help us grow as we become a virus in real space. Thanks a lot, guys. This is Skari signing off until next time. Skari out.